This is Dr. Charles Parker, and you're listening to Core Brain Journal. It's a place where I connect both fresh discoveries and interesting different perspectives from advanced mind science with the realities of real people and everyday life down on Main Street.
So welcome aboard, folks. Dr. Charles Parker here again. And what we're doing, we're welcoming Carolyn. I should have asked how to pronounce your last name, doggone it.
Daitch, like
Daitch.
H with a D on it.
I should have done that before we got on. I apologize. Daitch, we got it. And I've known Carolyn for a long time without knowing how to pronounce her name. She has been so kind to me out there on the internet. She's done so much for so many people by putting great information out there. She is a leading authority on, folks, get this, anxiety. Has anybody out there not had anxiety? I mean, is this a universal problem? Do we need to understand it better? And the other thing she brings to the table is not only that, but it's anxiety as it's related to executive function and attention deficit disorder. Now, is there anybody that has attention deficit disorder who hasn't had anxiety? Please, this is going to be an interesting conversation. So, Carolyn, let me introduce you first, and then we'll go ahead and talk a little bit about who you are personally. So, she lives in West Bloomfield, Michigan. She's a psychologist and is director of the Center for the Treatment of Anxiety Disorders in Farmington Hills, Michigan, and is a fellow with both the American and the Michigan Society for Clinical Hypnosis. And we've done some podcasts on clinical hypnosis. We could even talk about that, Carolyn, if you wish. She's routinely invited speaker around the world and frequently presents on, get this, ADHD and anxiety, as I said a moment ago. She's recognized for her practical, easy to implement interventions. She fits right in with our Core Brain Journal theme because that is exactly what we want. You know, we get off the hoi polloi, we take off the ladder, we get down to solid earth and talk about what works. Dr. Daitch is the author of 4 books, including the award-winning Affect Regulation Toolbox, Anxiety Disorders, the Go-To Guide, Anxious in Love, and her newest book, the 4th, is The Road to Calm Workbook. So, you know, we've got a lot to talk about, Carolyn. That's great. So with that little introduction, tell us a little more about who you are personally before we begin.
Well, I'm a hard worker.
I can see that.
and I'm like a lot of people who have some flavor of ADD. I'm interested in so many different things. I sometimes have to rein myself back because so many things are engaging, and I have so many now wonderful opportunities. It's like 31 flavors, but sometimes you shouldn't eat that much ice cream. But that's what I bring. But I am a hard worker, and I'm so blessed to be in a kind of work that's creative and where I can make a contribution. And one of the advantages of being more seasoned is I feel often that I have lots of experience, as you do, that informs the work that I do clinically.
You know, experience really does teach us a lot. I mean, if we keep trying to do it right and we don't get it right, the thing that's really important about your work, and I think is so revealing of how really advanced you are in your thinking, is if it's not right, you re-examine it. There are so many people that don't get it right and don't re-examine it.
Or don't individualize it.
Yeah.
Is, I think, absolutely essential. Many approaches are kind of cookbook or specifically evidence-based stuff is great, but you sometimes have to think out of the box. And when I first started as a very, very young therapist, I was only like 26 or 7. I didn't really know what I was doing. I hadn't quite gotten my PhD. And I was seeing so many people with anxiety disorders. And it was so long ago, there just really wasn't a lot of information. Most things in psychology were psychoanalytic, where you looked for the trauma in early childhood.
Yes.
And I thought, and even medication wasn't that readily available or good in those days. So I had to create things. And I just kind of made up things that made sense to me at the time. And some of those made up things really worked. Some of them didn't. And some of them worked some of the time and for some of the people. But those those early experiences where I had very little support, not enough mentorship, but I really wanted to help people, and certainly they needed help. That started the basis of my first book, the Regulation Toolbox, which had 32 tools, many of which I kind of played around with in my 20s, early 30s.
So now we're going to take this to the street level, Carolyn. A lot of our audience may not even know what affect is. So
okay.
We're going to talk. You go ahead and talk about it. I was going to say it, but you go right ahead. I'd like you to say it.
Okay. All right. Well, essentially what affect, my belief is that just about everybody who lives on the planet, and certainly who comes into my office, can get overreactive and be excessively emotional. Now, many people implode outward with anxiety or anger. Some people implode inward with depression. But essentially, affect dysregulation is the inability to manage emotions, to manage feelings. And and we all get angry, we all get frustrated, we all get sad. It's just part of being human. And we get emotionally triggered. And once we're triggered, some of us have a hard time controlling what I call emotional flooding. Emotional flooding is that feeling that you're just overwhelmed and that you lack the tools to self-regulate. What do I mean by self-regulate? That means to self-soothe. And when you don't have tools to self-soothe, then reactions, emotions, negative thoughts, and the decisions that you make in response become influenced more by anger, by fear, by sadness, rather than by reason. And emotional dysregulation or affect dysregulation doesn't live in a vacuum. It affects everybody we connect with. It affects our partners, our children, our coworkers. And so both you and the people around you are kind of at the mercy of your emotions. You're kind of like on guard for the next tidal wave that might arise. Now, if I can go on to the 4 signposts of emotional dysregulation. You ready?
Great. Thank you.
Okay. All right. The way that I've seen it is, first of all, some people have a really just temperamentally high intensity of emotion. And those people with high intensity of emotion often feel it in their bodies. There's some physiological flooding. Their heart beats quickly. Their hands get warm. It's like if a normal temperature is 98.6, they're operating at 101 on a normal day. And the problem is that the intensity of the trigger, the intensity of the emotion, is out of proportion to the situation you're responding to. So it's out of proportion. So for somebody who's pretty chilled, on a scale of 1 to 10, it might be kind of an aggravation 4, but somebody else, it might be a 9. Somebody I was talking to just today was going on a vacation, just a vacation, and she was at an 8 or a 9 in intensity. Now, everybody who's packing up for a vacation kind of thinks, am I going to forget something? And they might be a 2 or a 3 and remember to stop the mail. It's a certain amount of stress, but it doesn't need to be a 9 or a 10. So it's incongruent with the stimuli. And then the other thing that's really relevant to people who have difficulty managing emotions is that they stay longer, the emotional intensity. They have an inability to dampen it. And I was telling you before you started recording me about the glitches in technical world. Yesterday I taught a course and everything was going wrong. And I was worried I was starting the course late, which I did till I got to the Zoom geniuses and they figured it out. And so, of course, because I wanted to honor the people who I was teaching, I was stressed. I was triggered. I was worried that they would judge me. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But by the afternoon, when I came back to my office, and the course went fine, and they seemed to be understanding it, or at least they were polite about it, I went back to my baseline, which was fairly relaxed. And I remember it from yesterday, but people with difficulty managing emotions might be upset for a couple of days about that. Mm-hmm. And might get into a behavioral response and say, I'm never going to do any online teaching. I'm going to cancel that interview with Dr. Parker. I'm going to mess it up. And so there's a behavioral component too. And then what it does also, it robs you of the pleasure of the present moment. That if you're really revved up, you can't enjoy this moment with you and I together. Mm-hmm. So that's what I mean by inability to manage emotions, emotional flooding, or a more psychological technical term, affect dysregulation.
Mm-hmm. Affect, folks, is, she said it several times, but just, it's emotion. And affect dysregulation is emotion that's not managed well. And a person's not managing it for all kinds of different reasons, which Carolyn's going to, I'm sure, talk some more about. But the issue is when it's not managed well, it's a pollution. It's sort of like, I worked in substance abuse for a long period of time, and they say, a person's an alcoholic. There are 8 people that are suffering downstream from that person's problem. And that's what Carolyn's saying here with us. It's a problem for more people than just the participant.
And it's, again, a problem for all of us who drive on the expressway, get cut off in traffic, or late for an appointment, or get annoyed with their children. We all get triggered, every one of us human beings. But it's the ability to self-regulate, which means in layman's language, calm down, self-soothe, and then get perspective. A phrase I like people to say to themselves after they've calmed down: should I react? And if so, how? And just listen to that little voice. Should I react to my kid not cleaning up his room? Maybe it's not worth it. Or maybe I should do it tomorrow when he's not overwhelmed with final exams.
You're right in line with the Stoic philosophers, Carolyn. I don't know if you're into all that. I mean, you're Heraclitus, Epictetus, and Marcus Aurelius right there. That's what they're talking about, is affect, emotional regulation.
We've been talking about the same thing. Every time I write something, now I read about somebody who wrote about it 1,000 years ago or 500 years ago. Nothing new under the sun. And you can use a metaphor, Dr. Parker, that we're all come equipped with a gas pedal and a set of brakes. So sometimes we need to push that gas pedal down, and we rev into intense emotion. And sometimes we really need to do that if something urgent is happening. Mm-hmm. We need to be able to do that. We need to put our foot on the accelerator, but not all of us can power down once we get those kind of intense emotions up. Not all of us have systems that optimally apply the brakes quickly enough. So when the brakes and the gas pedals are working optimally, then we have some control. We speed up when we need to speed up. We calm down and put the brakes on when we need to. And we go 30 miles an hour when we're supposed to go, and 65 to 75 on the highway. But we're in trouble if we get stuck on that 65 to 75 when we're in the 30 miles per hour zone. Mm-hmm. And so that's my area of work. That's my passion, is to teach people to be less reactive. And when they're less reactive, everything gets better. That's a broad brush statement, but I believe it.
No, it's so true. And I know everybody that's listening knows that. The question is, how do you do it? So that first one, what is the name for that first type of most dysregulated anxiety that you were just talking about? Did you have a title for it?
Well, I called it affect dysregulation or emotional flooding. In my book, I call it emotional flooding. Okay. And it's kind of, you think about a tidal wave of emotional flooding. Now, you're asking me a very good question, my favorite question, what to do about it. Okay. Yes. And a lot of things to do about it, but I have something that is called the STOP solution. The STOP solution is delineated in the Road to Calm workbook. Okay. STOPS is an acronym, and it stands for S, being the point at which you catch it. You catch the tidal wave, you scan. So it's much easier to put out a little bit of water than a big flood, or a little bit of a fire than a forest fire. Mm-hmm. So the hard part for people of the whole stop solution, I think this is the hardest, is I have them scan regularly throughout the day and catch what's going on in their bodies, what's going on in their minds, their thoughts, and what's going on in their feelings. So just before our interview today, I couldn't get a hold of you on Skype. I was having, again, a technical challenge, and I was worried about it. So I had a thought, a worried thought. Oh, no. Dr. Parker's going to think I'm not reliable and responsible, because I said I'd talk to him at 4:50, and it's 4:49, and I still can't get a hold of him. Now, that was my cognition. If I paid attention to my body, there would be a little revving up. And if I paid attention to my feelings, it would be being a bit on edge. I hope that's okay for me to disclose what went on just a few minutes ago. And then what I did, I caught it. And there it is. And I took a mini timeout. T is for timeout. Timeouts are not just for kids. Everybody needs timeouts. Now, the timeouts optimally are about 20 minutes, but we don't all have 20 minutes. Sometimes we just have 90 seconds, but usually you can get 90 seconds, even if you're in the midst of arguing with your partner. Go to the bathroom for 90 seconds. And what I did is I just did a few I tried to walk my talk. I did some breathing. I said it wouldn't be catastrophic, whatever happened. And so you need to find a place to take a time out. For many people, it's the bathroom, because even your little kids usually don't follow you into the bathroom. If you're in your office, you can just shut the door. Even if you're a passenger in a car and you're annoyed with your kids or your partner, you can close your eyes for a moment and take a time out. And if you're driving, you don't want to close your eyes, but you can pause and say, I'll answer your questions, kids, in a minute. You can pause, and in that pause, you can go to O, which is overcoming emotional flooding. And what do I mean by overcoming emotional flooding? That's when you calm. A lot of different ways of calming. We don't have the time right now for me to teach your listeners all the different ways. There's lots of people who write about it. The easiest ways of calming might be just to do slow diaphragmatic breathing. Typically, you want to breathe longer on the exhalation than on the inhalation, because with longer exhalations, you elicit what we call a parasympathetic nervous system response that calms the body, essentially putting the brakes on, like I mentioned before. Another technique that I have in the timeout is what we use in hypnosis called an eye roll. I'll have you do it right now, Dr. Parker. Okay. I want you to look up toward your forehead with your eyes up. Perfect. Take a deep breath in. Hold the eyeballs up. Exhale and close your eyes and let them be at a normal level, gazing. And with your eyes closed, you can become curious about your breath. Just watching your breath, just noticing, if you would, what the temperature of your breath is. Perhaps it's cooler when you breathe in, or warmer when you breathe out. Or maybe you notice the texture of your breath, whatever that means to you. And if your mind wanders, which is the nature of the mind, just bring it back to the breath for a moment. And now, with your permission, I'm just going to ask you to scan your body, and if there's, with your eyes closed, and see if there's any tension remaining in your body. Usually there's a little tightness at the end of the day now. There might be some tiredness. And if there's any tension in your body, just put it in your right hand. And when you've got it all there, make a fist. Nod your head since I can't see your fist. When it's there, keep your eyes closed. I'll let you open them in a minute, I promise. And just hold all that tension. Hold it, hold it, hold it. You might even give it a color. Is there a color of it? Some people pick red, blue. Okay. And just put that blue tension in your fist. Hold it, hold it, hold it. And then open your fingers slowly and let all that blue tension go down, down, down to your floor, underneath your carpeting or wood floor. I don't know what's on the floor for you. And then beneath the floorboards, under the building, and into the core of the earth, where it's cleansed and far away from you. Now just shake your hand a little bit. And when you're ready, open your eyes and tell me what you notice.
Well, I may not be able to continue this interview.
Well, you will. You will, because you're
what a relaxing. That was so pleasant. Thank you so much. I mean, it was really. I hope the listeners, when they were driving, didn't go off the road. I mean,
big caveat: if you're listening in the car, don't shut your eyes. Listen to this later. You can, though, in the car, do the tight fist.
You can do the tight fist, and you can breathe. I've
right.
done meditation in the car on a late night driving back from D.C. down to Norfolk. And I think you can have a certain heightened awareness, but close out thinking and do a relaxation as long as you get your mind free and you just do the breathing. I mean, that's my own experience, but I mean, you just did a great job. I have the technique of taking the light into the fist and taking the eyes up and bringing them down. And then the breathing with the extended exhalation is very interesting. I didn't know about that. I mean, I've done a lot of meditation. It's so cool. Thank you so much.
And what's cool about it is if you catch it, again, it's hard to catch it, and then take a time out. And you can take a time out even if I know you love your patients, but let's say you had a really difficult patient who was triggering you in some way, too demanding. You could actually if you sit at a desk, or even if you don't, you can make that tight fist and release. Or somebody can do that in a board meeting, or when they're talking to their boss. It can be very, very discreet that you're doing that. Or if you're in a meeting and somebody's triggering you, you can close your eyes for just a moment. Somebody might just think you're tired and do that eye roll with your eyes closed. So the nice thing about this is they're kind of portable techniques.
Yes.
Now the P stands for putting the tools into action. And in my newest book, I have 13 tools. And but the P could really be changed to perspective too, because basically you're talking back to your brain. So it could be like today. Okay, we'll go back to me because I was just with me having a trigger that I was worried about getting into Skype with you. Okay, but when I did my breathing and my quieting, I just very quickly said something that is true about me. Is that this may sound arrogant, but I always get through these things. I've done lots of interviews and lots of big speeches, and somehow with technical glitches or PowerPoints not working, I get through them. So that's called age regression in hypnosis. I did that so I can do this. I got through my divorce so I can get through this cancer treatment. Or I got through cancer treatment, I can get through this difficult divorce or change in jobs. Or in the P, we can go into the future. You can go into the future when those teenagers who are irritating you are away at college and they're doing well and got the house back to yourself. Or go into the future when not only when perhaps the current stressor is past, or if it's a stressor that's ongoing. Let's say you have a a partner who's disabled. That's not going to go away, but you can go into the future when you're more resilient to manage that ongoing stressors, because some don't go away, some don't. So there's a myriad of, I'm so glad that you're finding them interesting, because I just think that if you do them, they really can be transformative. They really can change people's lives.
Well, I think you take the mystery of what sounds like a hypnotic process into just a different reality. It's not mysterious. It's not magic. It's not anybody having, going to go out of their body or anything like that. It's just, how do you actually handle the challenges that create anxiety, the stress that you're dealing with, by gaining a different perspective. I like the idea with the P in perspective, because that is one of my favorite words, because it's so much what we're troubled with in mental health is a limited perspective based on the way we've looked at things in the past.
And exactly. But there's always another part of you. There is always something. One of my tools is called the juxtaposition of two thoughts and feelings. So there can be a part of you that is really, really worried about, this keynote speech you're going to give. I'm sure you've given lots of speeches. So you could be really worried because it's a new audience. You don't know who they are. But there can be another part of you that is wise and seasoned and has come through, that has helped thousands of patients, that can know that that part of you can rely on. And you can feel both feelings and thoughts at once. I think it's unrealistic for the fears to go away. My goal is not, this is something that I have changed over the years. At first, when I was that young, inexperienced therapist, I wanted the fears to go away. Now, I want you to honor that there's the fear, or there's the despair, or there's the difficulty concentrating. And my worry about my difficulty concentrating, or my shame about it, side by side with a part that's compassionate, that knows that I'll get through with work, that even if I don't get everything done I want to get done, it probably isn't catastrophic. So to say hello, hi fear, there you are. It makes sense that you're afraid. Or again, for those people with ADD, it makes sense that this is going to take you longer. Or you might have to have somebody review that email because you might make a mistake on it. And it'll be okay. It'll be okay. We'll get strategies. So it's like the grown-up in you comforting the young, scared part, or the grown-up in you comforting the sad, despairing part. And we always have two parts available.
Well, from an ADD recovery point of view, a lot of our audience will have issues like that. And I think what happens is you've helped to dichotomize it in a constructive way, in that you have these differing pieces of your thinking, different parts of your personality, and you're actually manage the ones you can manage. And you're diminishing the ones that you feel are not manageable by actually managing the ones that you can more effectively.
Right. And another approach that I have specifically with people with the ADD is called the accessing the disciplined parent inside, or the wise self. So what I tell my patients who have ADD, it's not your fault that you have ADD. It's pretty heritable, but it is your responsibility to manage it. And so I access a kind of firm parent. Let's say the part of you that maybe trained a dog. Remember training your puppy, or that was firm with your child. All of us have had some experience having to tell somebody they have to toe the line. Mm-hmm. Not disrespectfully, but that they have to toe the line. Every teacher says, you got to get that paper in. And so I have people access compassion for their ADHD or their anxiety, which often are coexisting. And be compassionate, because there's no, you don't deserve shame for it. You didn't ask for this genetic vulnerability. And again, you have to access that part of you that can manage your mind. So I will have people in the session envision themselves going home that evening, not feeling like doing their bills or their homework or organizing their presentation, and have them go use the stop solution, self-regulate or self-calm, and then see themselves doing what they need to do. And the wise parent saying to you, I know you don't feel like writing these notes. I know you don't want to. And I get it. And you're going to do it. And you're going to do it now. Mm-hmm. And so it's kind of firm. But the people with ADD have to access that firm parent inside them. And we all have that firm parent, just like we all have a little kid in us.
Yeah, I'm sorry I interrupted. I apologize. But I was thinking while you were talking, I was thinking about, so one of the things that's been so important for me in my own practice in understanding people regarding executive function challenges is the issue of the types of anxiety, and the cognitive anxiety, which is more in your mind, and the somatic anxiety, which is more in your body. Mm-hmm. And what your technique is really helping to address both of those, because so much of the ADD issue is really not a deficit. It isn't a person's missing something. It only looks like a person's missing something if you don't know what you're talking about and you're looking at them from the outside.
Yeah.
On the inside, their self-management is a jumble of abundance and too many things going on.
Yeah.
And so your technique covers that from a somatic point of view by the relaxation and by moving things around and breathing and putting them over in your hand. But it also covers the cognitive, the unmanageable cognitive abundance, where a person's just plain old thinking too much.
Exactly. Yes, exactly. Where I have some, I would call myself having some shadow syndromes. Maybe I'm minimizing of ADD. Where it's most manifest, though, as I started talking to you, is that I want to do it all. When I was just a little girl, my mother said, Carolyn wants to take in the whole world. So I want to write books and see a full practice of patients and teach here and teach there. And it's wonderful. But I get external coaches. My assistant in my office will say, I think you should say no to that speaking engagement. Or it's going to be you're doing too many that month. Uh-huh. And so we all have kind of these unique minds and kind of schemas, the way we organize things in the world. And we tend to be, many of us, a little out of balance. Many of my patients who don't have ADD, but a lot of anxiety, don't do enough. Everything is so daunting, and they're so afraid of not doing things perfectly that some of them have ADD actually, but a lot of them are more anxious, who are just avoiders. And so they would never, ever do a fraction of what you and I do, because they would be so scared. So any way that you organize yourself and orient to the world can be problematic if it's a little bit too developed.
Well, I think that's so true. And I think just apropos of that point is the whole awareness of the benefit of external structure. I mean, somehow, one of the things that happens, so many people think, hey, this all has to happen internally, and that external structure is somehow verboten, somehow it's not the right thing. But if a person can appreciate the signs from the outside that a structure is necessary or certainly forthcoming, it's there, it's not far away, and anticipate the structure that's external to yourself, then you can set the internal structure to actually synchronize with the external part of the
Exactly.
external reality.
Exactly. So whether there's somebody reminding you of things or having notes that remind you or listening, I make recordings for all my clients. And so they can listen to a recording before they start their schoolwork or their at homework that reminds them that when their mind wanders, they say to themselves, concentrate now. Over and over again, mind wanders, concentrate now. Or again, accessing the ego state, you may not want to do this and you're going to do that. So that's an external resource. Myself, again, I have my assistant check with me. I have a friend in New Mexico. I'll call her and say, I've got these 5 things to do. And she'll say, okay, get your calendar out. And how much time is it going to take to prepare that course? And then I double it. I double it on my schedule. So if I think it's going to take 2 hours, I make it 4 hours. And I write it in there. That's an external structure for me. Wednesday from 2 to 4, I'm preparing for this, for a talk I'm giving. And then Friday from 3 to 5, I'm doing it. Because people who have a certain amount of, one of the wonderful things, if you have a temperament toward ADD, is that you work quickly. A lot of people work really quickly, but sometimes underestimate how much time things are actually going to take to do it well.
You know, I love the way you're thinking about this, Carolyn. What really happens here is that I regret that we're moving towards the time we have to wind up, because it's one of these things you can't have a short conversation with a person like yourself, because there's so many interesting avenues that you're bringing up that are so useful and so practical. I mean, that whole idea that you just said of adding that additional benefit to a patient, whether they're in your office or whether they're virtual, where you actually record something for them to use that they can take home. What an excellent idea. I mean, we should all be doing that. I've done that a little bit, but it is hard to make it happen. And I wanted to compliment you on adding that extra value. I mean, that's something, it's, seeing a person like you, you're giving them a take home.
Take home. And I even have them rehearse in session, them listening to the CD or doing the self-talk, and then I check in about their homework. I'm really a stickler about homework because people naturally go back to their default mode, whatever it is. They break diets, they stop flossing their teeth, whatever it is. And so you lots of accountability to change habitual responses.
Well, that is so valuable. I really kind of hate to wind up here because we could talk for another 2 hours, really. And it seems like we just started to scratch the surface on your interesting material. So what I want to do is open up, if you would please tell us where people could reach you. I'm going to get this on the show notes, but please tell people that.
Well, I have a couple of different websites. One of them is CarolynDaitchPhD.com. I'm sure that's right.
Yeah.
And my email is carolyn.daitch@me.com. Carolyn, CAROLYN .daitch@me.com.
Daitch is DAITCH, guys.
Yeah. And that's how they could reach me. My Carolyn Daitch PhD is the website where I do talk about my training. And if they just Google Carolyn Daitch on just if they don't remember the rest, Carolyn Daitch, I'm all over Google, like a lot of us are.
Yes, you are.
And then if they go on to Amazon, they'll see my 4 books and some of my audio recordings as well.
We're going to have all those 4 books right there for them, the link right there on the website. So, and we'll have that all set up. And Carolyn's giving us a PDF that's going to be available. It's going to be a download PDF with the number of this episode. Right now at this moment, I think it's going to be 079, but I've stopped giving numbers because sometimes these things get moved around. But it's going to be the download on the. It's going to be the download available on the show notes, so you can download her PDF, which is going to go into some of these details in more readable and right there in your own machine.
Great.
So Carolyn, thank you so much for taking the time. I appreciate it. It's so nice meeting you. We have never met before. We've been back and forth out there on social media. You've been very kind. You've been very helpful. for me personally. And I want to thank you again for being involved in what we're doing. And I'm glad to have the opportunity to pay you back a little bit and help you with what you're doing.
Well, you're so easy to talk to. This was so much fun. And I'd love to talk to you again sometime. It was just a delight.
We'll definitely do it. You come up with a topic and I'll re-invite you.
Okay. Super. Okay.
You have a good one, girl.
Thanks for listening to Core Brain Journal. We're working every day behind the scenes to bring you reports that connect research benches with those street trenches. Here we share the complexity of mind science because, as you know, details really do matter. One of the most pervasive, misunderstood challenges is how commonplace medications, like those written for ADHD, are used so regularly without clear guidelines. If you think you'd like more specifics, take a minute to download my 2-page PDF packed with video links and references on the absolute essentials of how to start ADHD medications. They're easily available at corebrainjournal.com/start. Thanks for listening. Do connect and stay tuned. Together we can make a difference.